Hey there YouTube and the Magic subreddit. This is Rain. I make a YouTube channel for limited formats and I've been to many pre-releases. Just to go over a bit of a history, I've been going to pre-releases since I think my first pre-release was when I was 11, um, and now I'm 19, almost 20, so I've been going to pre-releases for many years now. And these are just some things that I think are very important to getting you to enjoy the pre-release, which is meant to be a fun event. The first one is one that Magic players often joke about, is hygiene. You're going to be in a room, stuck in this room for 4 to 6 hours generally with this group of players, and one person smelling bad in that room can just ruin the day for everybody. Not completely ruined, but just it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, you're being disrespectful and discourteous by not taking 30 minutes to just smell nice. So do it always, but especially at the pre-release. Next up, things you should bring. I have a few things that I'd like to add to that category, but for now, bring 6-sided dice and bring a notepad. 6-sided dice are useful. There's an ability in this format called Outlast that puts +1/+1 counters on your creatures. So it can help be clear about that. You put a 1 on that creature, it's very clear that it has a counter. In addition, there are some tokens in the set, goblin tokens, warrior tokens. If you've been playing Magic for a while, you might have those tokens already, so you can bring those, but if you don't, D6s are a nice way of supplementing for those. Like putting 3 warrior tokens into play, you could just be like 3 on a D6. Ask your opponent, is this clear? But they get the point. So those are useful reasons to bring a 6-sided die. And even if you're not using cards that require a 6-sided die, your opponent might be, so it's nice to bring them anyway. Next up, Wizards has done a very good job at supplying 20-sided dice in each of all of the packs of the pre-release packs, sorry. So you can keep track of life. However, those spin downs, D20s, however you want to call them, are very shaky. They can roll very easily, they can fall off the table, they can get knocked, and sometimes you get into arguments with some people about what life total you're at, if you're at like 15 or 14, and it just will get you into some arguments with some players. And with notepads, there's no arguments. You have the life totals for each player written down, and if their d20 gets knocked, you can just be like, hey man, I wrote the life total down, you're at like 14 or something, and for your life total, well, that doesn't change for you. So bring a notepad, they're just superior to d20s in every way. In addition, there's some things that help you look at your opponent's hand in this format. There's some black cards, there's also this one. And I want to go a little bit of courtesy when writing down what's okay, what's not okay with this sort of ability. Writing down the names of the cards. Some people will think you're being try-hard. However, it's not discourteous to write down the names of your opponent's cards when you're doing something like this. What not to do though is like they have a Glacial Stalker in their hand. Instead of like writing down Glacial Stalker, you start writing down Glacial Stalker, 6 mana, has more, flips up for 5, is a 4/5. Writing down all the details about their hand takes a lot of time from the match and is very rude and discourteous. So don't do that. Alright, next up I want to get into this step, coming in with a plan, because it also has to do with things you should bring to a pre-release. You're at a pre-release for a very long time, so dehydration and hunger become an issue. A lot of pre-releases that go over a meal will have a lunch break. However, that doesn't mean you won't get hungry between rounds and want a snack. So bring water. It's very important to stay hydrated, and bring snacks. You don't want to be uncomfortable and hungry. Um, One thing to note about this is when you're bringing water to an event that has a lot of cardboard cards, you don't want to have the water on the table. You want to have it in your backpack or under your chair when there are games going on around you or you're in a game. Bring out the water between the rounds, between the playing, because if your water falls over, spills all over yours or somebody else's cards, that can just ruin a day. But bring water and put it somewhere safe. Next is more of a gameplay thing. For those of you who have played sealed before, it's pretty clear in a lot of formats how to break down a pool. This is going to be a challenge, even for people who are very familiar with Magic. With 3-color clans, with the amount of land fixing and other sort of variables in this format, it's very, very hard to build a deck with this format. There are times you should be playing 4 colors, there are times you should be playing 3 colors, deciding what 3 colors to play, not just sticking to the clan you picked in some situations. Like, there are so many factors in this set in particular that it can be daunting to open up cards with 3 colors and just be like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I would say come into the event with a plan on how to break down the pool and how to build a good deck. Because even if you think you're a good sealed player, this format will be daunting for everybody. I know I'm going to be taking all the time, and I might even want more time after that just because I have a plan, but this plan takes a while. A little bit of an addition is use up all your time, but that's not super important, but I'll just mention it briefly. It takes a lot of time to build a deck, especially with all the intricacies of 3-colored formats. I have a lot of videos that you can check out though. I have a step-by-step guide on how I break down sealed in this format, and I do it in some examples, so you can take a look at those videos to help guide you and help you not be intimidated by what you open. This isn't super important, but I'll touch on it very briefly. Performing well can often mean knowing a bit about the format. You're not expected to. This isn't important, but knowing some cards can help you do better in the format, and that's all I'll say on it. It's not a very important step. Next is having fun. Wizards has been doing better and better about giving us stuff to do, giving us ways to enjoy ourselves at a pre-release. Since they've started putting in these cards that come in every single pack or sealed box that have like objectives that are like fit to the clan, probably like Tamur is going to be like scream a roar as you attack with like 4/4s and 5/5s or something like that. There are cards that can be like normally, if you think about it, socially awkward, but really they're meant to just like, you're playing with Magic players, you're playing with gamers and nerds, and just do whatever you want within reason. If you're having fun, go compete with your friends, see how many objectives you can get with these cards, and just let go. Don't worry about what other people will think of you for doing this. That's something I see very often, is like high five somebody and people will just be like, oh, that's really awkward. I don't high five somebody you don't know. Like, that's really awkward. I don't want to do that. What are they going to think when I high-five them? Stop worrying. Do these, they're fun. Compete, see how many you can get with your friends. Next is come in with a friend. This is every pre-release I've gone into alone, I've had about half as fun as when I come in playing with a friend. There are so many moments in Magic and so many games that you just want to like share with your friend. Want to relive like, oh man, he played that insane bomb. Or like, I played so well in that match. Like, what would you do in this situation? Like, so many ways to enjoy Magic with other people. And that's one of the things that separates Magic from like video games. You're having face-to-face interaction. You're going out, spending your day, having fun with people. And having fun with people you know helps that even more. Next up, I want to get into some very common bad habits that Magic players will have at these events, that you don't do them. First up, don't get worked up over losing. You lose a match, and maybe you're like, oh man, I didn't play well that game. Oh man, I could have done this differently. It's okay to think that in your head. As a Spike, I do that all the time. But saying, wow, I should have won that game, or wow, I'm like a better player than you, or something like that, you're taking away from their win and trying to make yourself feel better about losing. It's rude, disrespectful, especially to a lot of the people who just come for pre-releases. I know quite a few people who do that. So if you get worked up over losing, um, just not a good time. In addition, one thing I want to touch on with this is just generally being disrespectful to kids. This is the most frequent thing I see. Everybody I know has done this. So don't feel bad if you've done this before, but this is just something I want to address. Kids may not be as old as you. They may not have the experience you have. They may get excited over cards that may not be good. However, saying, oh man, I have to play a kid this round, or saying, just being condescending to them when you're playing against them, just being like, don't do this, telling them how to play. You're not raising this kid, like, let them play their game. Every time I sit across from a kid, I play no differently than if I'm sitting across from an adult. I treat them no differently. And that should be the way it is. I've been playing Magic since I was 9. I've been going to pre-release events since I was 11. I first won one when I was 11. I won one later on in the year. I think it was my second one. And even then, people were being condescending as heck. Saying things like in sealed where there's 6 packs, they're like, oh man, he just got really lucky with his pool, or I can't believe I lost to a kid, or people do this in front of the kids too, which bugs me the most. Like, sitting across from a kid, your friend comes up to you and you're like, your friend's like, man, you have to play a kid this round? Just stop. This is like the rudest thing I've seen. Really, guys, stop this. Next is, don't talk about your players being bad or about them playing certain cards. This is something I do in my head. Like if you watch one of my videos, I say, why is he playing this card? However, I never, ever ever say it out loud to my opponent. If it's a little different, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, take a look at my deck. Hey, what do you like? What don't you like about my play? And then I'll maybe bring up like, hey, I don't think this card is very good. I'll think you'll do better if you're playing with this card. But unless they specifically ask you, do not comment on what they're playing or how they're playing it. Let them play their game, and you will play yours. And last but not least, I know a lot of people who are on both sides of the fence with this concept. I personally don't think it's a very big deal when my opponent reaches over and checks out what my cards do, especially in a pre-release where people don't know what cards do. However, there are a lot of people who get very upset when you just grab their cards and take a look at them, or when you like slide them over to your side of the table without asking them. So all I'm going to say here is avoid some confrontation, be polite, and it doesn't really matter if you don't agree with their reasoning or you think they're being ridiculous. Just ask your opponents, hey, can I look at this card? Hey, do you mind if I see what this does? Before you just take it. So this is something that I needed to improve on, and I have, and something that just you should do. All right, these are the big things that I wanted to talk about coming into a pre-release. Pretty much any pre-release, but especially this one, in terms of this step in particular. But hopefully if you follow these steps, you'll have a better pre-release and just have a great time. There's no reason this shouldn't be like the highlight of your weekend, unless you're seeing like Bill Gates or something. I love pre-releases. Nobody knows the format. You get to play with new cards. It's just so much fun for everybody. Alright, thank you for watching. I hope that you learned a thing or two, or maybe you thought about something a different way, and that you have a great time this weekend.